Hi guys, in this video we're going to start project 1, which is creating an insect for our diorama that we completed in exercise 1. So what we're going to take a look at first is my references. So apologize if you're an arachnophobe. I've chosen to do a tarantula for my demo. So you can see I've pulled up a lot of different images here. We're talking about, some close up of the creepy stuff, the eyes and like the teeth and stuff, and looking at posture because I might want to pose this one completed. I also found some illustrations that really show more about the anatomy, about arms and how they connect to things. And they're all large images as well. I wanted to make sure that I had a good resolution on, so that way I get really close and see these kind of details, how they kind of close in on the bottom. And I also went online and I purchased a, probably just tap on it right here. This is a tarantula that's in lucite and stuff. Not that you guys have to go and do this or anything, but I like having a physical reference whenever I can find one, and I know I could get one online and stuff because they're pretty common. I think it's cost me around 15, 20 bucks and stuff. It's a nice little paperweight and it's interesting. I also found some that had some interesting color on them because I might want to be able to use some of this color for my own version of the tarantula, but I'm still going to try keeping it based off of its anatomy. So I would find as many references as you can when you do this. And I could probably still find more because I probably got roughly, I don't know, maybe around 25, 30 or something like that in here. I don't know, but maybe less than that. But the more you have, the better you're going to be about being able to find the details you didn't see at certain angles, like how this looks dead on, how these eye forms look, things like that is what you really want to find good reference to. Another thing is, and I may have mentioned this in a previous video, I don't want you to find something that's too hairy. Meaning that, like this tarantula's got plenty of tarantula fur all over it, but I can still pick up on details like in here and here for what I need to sculpt, because the goal isn't to hide our sculpture underneath like a fiber mesh or anything like that. It's to use fiber mesh to enhance the sculpture that's underneath it. So things I'd probably say no, you really can't do that would be butterflies. I think a little bit too simple, to be perfectly honest, just because I think people want to just paint the wings and they put more time into the wings than they have actually the insect portion of it. Same thing with like some very furry moths, like yeti moths. Those are really, really covered in like a fur. Furry caterpillars won't work, so I'd stay away from that. Like keep it, just a relative, little bit hairy spider, maybe a bee or something like that. Bumblebee might be a good one also. So that's kind of where I want to put the limit on it, because other than that, the world's your oyster. If you want to, you can even look into things that aren't necessarily insects but are kind of like it, like crustaceans, like a pill bug might be a good one. If you're looking at a crab or something like that, I've done a crab before. So something that fits your diorama, though. If your diorama looks like it's very, very dry, you probably don't want to put any kind of ocean critter next to it. But that'd be up to you if you want to go back and modify it. But anyway, I got my references over here. I'll pull it onto my second screen so we don't have to stare at spiders while I do my lecture about what we're doing today. And that is basically we're taking the blockout information as much as we need to build up the entire anatomy of the spider. So we're going to be using like this simple geometry that we see in a form like the insect, and insects are full of these simplified forms, and just constructing them together. So I'm going to start by getting rid of my light box, and I'm going to pull in, I guess we'll start off with more the base shape that we see, and this will probably be a sphere. We'll start with the abdomen areas, the areas that are right down the middle. What I'm going to do is, pull up a reference over here to kind of look at where their body form masses are and kind of give an aspect ratio, so that way I go segment, segment, segment all the way up. So let's go ahead and draw this guy out. I'll hit the T key, so that way I go into my transform mode, and then I need to go into Polymesh 3D, so that way it's in active mode. And I may have mentioned this before, but I'm not a fan of the red clay. It throws me off for some reason, so I always change it to something like matte cap gray. I like working with the grays more. I do that. So now I have this. What I'm going to do is maybe do a couple little slight modifications on it. Maybe we'll just do a quick move. So I hit the M key. I'm just going into my brushes. We're using the move brush. And I'll go ahead and scale this out. And I'm going to hit the X key so that way I'm working in symmetry. I'm just going to pull it back a little bit. Because this is the form I kind of see right here. Start off with is just a little bit of a atom there, and then I'll look at it from the side because I got a visual reference from here, which I don't think this is a tarantula. So this little bulbous area probably isn't as, well, I guess it could be. But we definitely need to kind of adjust it so that way when we're looking at it from the side, it makes sense. So this is our narrow side, and looks like this needs to go back up like this, and then flatten out the bottom a little bit. Alright, so we have one piece done. Let's go ahead and add in the next one that'll go above it. Something you might want to take a look at is making sure that you have something like your floor turned on. So if you need to look at your floor, there should be a floor button over here. Here it is. That way you can see, hey, you know, is this going in the right direction? Am I building it up and down, which I kind of am. So that way I can just hit the E key, rotate it into the right direction. I could hold on to the Shift key, and you see that little number moving around? That's in degrees, so that's 90 degrees this way. And it looks like we just need to kind of rotate it like that. There we go. Now hit the Q key to get back into my regular mode. And then what we're going to do is start building subtools of each part of our spider going around. So let's go ahead and append in another sphere. And we have to make sure we select that sphere after we create it. And that way we know where we're working on. We know that the top layer is not selected because it turns gray, kind of masks itself out, and I could pull this guy forward. And now I'll look at my references and see what type of form that one portion of that abdomen area is. It's fairly flat on the top. That's what I noticed immediately, is that, you know, the tarantula top right here, super flat. Let's go back and flatten this guy out, making sure we're on symmetry mode, because if you work on symmetry mode on one, doesn't mean it's going to translate to the other. So remember that, you know, it's all dependent. Each one of these layers has its own history up here. You'll see, like, you know, how that changes from that to that, and the only time that goes away is when you merge it or do some other. There's a few other actions that do that as well. And this almost gets tucked underneath it near the bottom. Let's pull on another one of my references here. I just want to do kind of a scale comparison because it's not really too off on the top. It might be a little bit more narrow, but not by much. And it also is kind of flat in the front too. Oops. And we're not looking to get this hyper-articulated with itself. We just want these block out, so that way if we looked at it from a distance, we'd be like, oh yeah, that's a spider. We know what that is. Kind of do some light smoothing, holding on to the Shift key and moving some stuff around just to kind of flatten that edge out. In there. There we go. I think it's got kind of that shape that we're looking for. We'll definitely build on it. It also has these two things right here. I'm sure someone knows a scientific name for these little mandible things that are in the front. But I want to put those in as well. And we'll just continue using sphere. So let's go ahead and append in another one. Make sure we grab it. And we'll walk it forward. I'm also going to stretch it out a little bit like that because that's kind of the form. If we take a look at the reference, it's kind of like a, oops, like that. And I'm sure this kind of wraps around underneath. It looks like it may do that. a bit more, so I might need to go back and make some adjustments. But I think it's just down to the teeth. Like these are the things that kind of wrap around and go to the teeth. But I'm sure there's a little bit of bend on that, and we'll adjust that later. But I'm just going to put one here. And you can see it's like dead in center. So I'm going to move it over to the right a little bit. And that should be good. Like I said, we don't have to worry about the bigger detail of this moving around. But I want to make sure that we're working symmetrically through this. Meaning that, you know, after I make something like this, right here, I want to have another one over here to reference from. So what I'm doing is pulling this over to the right. So the Q key. And we haven't subdivided. This is an important step right here. When I go to geometry, there is no subdivisions in this area. So what I'm going to do is hop down to the deformation area, and what I could do if I don't have anything on, I can just click the mirror button. We can see this kind of jump the other side. See how it hops to the other side? So if I duplicate this guy, and we're going to go to our subtool and duplicate it. So now we have both of them directly on top of each other. And then I go back over to deformation and then tell it to use that mirror. We have both. But if I want to control both of these at the same time, I need to merge them. So I'll merge this guy down. And what we're going to see when we merge this is the history is going to start disappearing because it doesn't have that reference for the other. It might remember the history of this particular object because it's pulling that upward, or vice versa. Like this guy right here. See how it's only got that couple little history? But one of these is going to lose its history for sure. So if I go to like merge down, it's going to tell me, hey, if you do this, you're going to not be able to click undo, which is basically true because you won't be able to hit Control Z to go back through your history. You can still separate them, but you can't get some of that history back. So when I click on this, now you'll see that we still have that history, but if I was to go back, see how it kind of turns that off, and we can't get the other guy back. So we have to go back, duplicate all that stuff over again if we want to do it. But now I can hit the X key and I can manipulate both these guys on the same time. Maybe we'll give it a little bit of that kind of curvature we're looking for. Hit the W key, walk it back. Go look for where that position is on the head as well. It looks like it might be a little bit high on the head. Yeah. So when I made these, I probably should have made them a little bit more like that. And that's what I'm looking for. A little closer together, not quite touching yet. So let's go ahead and hit the F key. F key will focus everything. I'll hit the Q key, and I'm just going to take a look at the form that I have right now. Still very generic, but you know, I'm just laying out roadmap for everything. So let's continue adding some other stuff. By the time we're finished with this, it'll probably be easily recognized, even as like a tarantula, just through the big forms because there's big, blocky, chunky looking pieces to this insect. That's a fun pose. Maybe I'll steal that pose. Very spooky. Alright, so let's take a look here at the bottom. We'll start that, kind of work our way around. So we got these, what is this thing called? Tibia, and we got dorsal claws. Interesting stuff. Alright, so what we need to do, kind of think of this the same way that we did this guy over here. All we need to do is build up one row of legs and then follow that same process, and we could duplicate it over. Probably do the same thing for the spinnerets down here, but we're going to start with maybe the ones that's close up and kind of move around, making sure that we got it at the bottom. Now, the way we're going to do this will still be with spheres. I think the spheres are probably the best way to kind of tackle this at the beginning because we're going to zero mesh all this so that way we don't see the ugly geometry later on. Let's go ahead and append in. We could use maybe a cylinder. That could work also. Now that I'm looking, let's start with the cylinder. I bet you that will probably be a little easier to work with. So I have my cylinder selected. Let's go ahead and scale it down. We'll move over here. And what I'm basically trying to do is get the form of this narrowed in, and then scale it upward like that. Oops. Like that. I just really want to get that thickness right that goes around these guys. And when I'm looking at I'm always like kind of comparing things. So if I look at the size of this like little fang area that I created, like that's the width of it, and we compare it to this, they're pretty close. So I'm going to take this at just about the same scale before I start moving it around, and what we'll do is just have to rotate it and put it into place. You'll notice that the object axis over here does update, so that's always based off of object space, which is good, but you could change that at any time. But in a situation like this, you probably want to keep it because it allows you to do stuff like that. And then move it along that axis as well. So that's what I'm doing right now, is just kind of trying to find that spot that looks right by comparison. And it looks like they kind of come in. Yeah, the little crease that you see in here doesn't go in too deep. And let's make sure this is tilted the right way. Alright. Maybe it goes in just a little more. There we go. That looks about right. So I'm going to hold on to the control key and drag this, and it's going to duplicate this one portion of the leg. And this is going to be where that next area kind of bends inward to go forward. And then we'll go up a little bit, and I'm going to look how far this thing, this thing, and it's going to bend a little bit. You can see that kind of curvature in there, but I'm not overly concerned about that. I could go ahead and change this in a little bit, but I'm just going to make sure that it's like at the right scale. It looks like it's roughly about the same size, maybe a little bit larger than that area as it wraps around. And this is also probably getting tilted too, so if you think about where the legs are starting to go up, I probably need to go over here and then lift it up a little bit. And now that I got that, let's go back to my reference. We'll see another one. So I'm holding on to the control key and moving it. This won't happen if you have subdivision. So if you're trying to do this and you keep on getting errors about subdivisions, it's because you've subdivided at some point and you just need to delete your subdivision history. This seems like a smaller one. Oops. Almost like it behaves like a kneecap. Goes in there. Let's take a look at it from a different angle, making sure that I got that. See, I'm looking at the top and bottom. It goes. So this is right here is this guy right here. This is a little kneecap. So let's go to the top. Actually, we're comparing it to this one over here now. Probably about right there. And then it's going to come back down, I assume. That's what it looks like to me. I wish there's a side angle for this, but you just kind of have to gauge where you think these tips are actually hitting the bottom. So we're out to here, so we got two more. So I'll go ahead and hold on control, make another one. This one's going to be longer, rotated more. Just like that. Already starting to get that spindly spider feel to it. Let's move this guy over here so we can see what we're doing. There we go. Got the thing going. And let's take a look at this from the other angle. So we are on basically this guy right here. And let's look at where that kind of leads us in next, because I think it's all the right size. We just have this last one right here, which is the one that kind of plants itself. So let's go ahead and make the last one. There. It's going to be tilted in. Probably a little bit smaller. Just going to be something like that. And all I've done is just really gave myself a roadmap for some of the other guys that are in here, because if I was to kind of compare these guys, there's a sense of symmetry. Just that the things are getting longer. So, you know, if we go 1, 1, 2, 2, 3, 3, 4, 4, 5, 5, and it looks like they might have an extra one on this. So, and they're like that because this isn't a leg, if I remember correctly. I can't remember what they call these guys, patella stuff. I think they do something with touching and feeling the environment, but not walking. So these are the walking legs, so they have the extra piece to them. But what this will allow me to do, now this is all on one layer. I'm going to go ahead and hold on control and clear my history or my masking. pardon me. I'll even hit the Q key real quick, and all I'm doing is taking this one leg right here, where everything is, you know, deselected, right here, and I'm going to duplicate it, so that way there's no masking or anything like that on it. The setup like that. So I'm going to hit the W key, and you'll see I can move the entire leg. So what I'm going to do is move the leg around here to where that next start is here, and then I'm going to go segment by segment and move it. So I need to move the leg from down here, so you can unlock this little gizmo when you're in this move mode and move it to where you want to, and then lock it back up, and you'll see now I'm rotating from that angle. So I'll do that quite a bit. Maybe pull this guy down a little bit, because this guy's going to be probably the one that's, and if we take a look at it, it looks like it is slightly above it. See how there's an overlap of these two shapes? So this guy is definitely down below just a little bit. Let's take a look at it from the top. There we go. Okay. So just doing another comparison now. I'm going to hit the Shift F key real quick in here so we can see the poly groups for this. So my goal is, you know, it's not to have the same leg repeating. I'm just using it geometry, and then I'm going to edit it a little bit, you know, because this leg's going to be longer, it's going to come out higher and probably rest down deeper. So a poly group is going to allow me to work with those, because you see how it's all purple right here. And if I go to the poly group option and I choose automatic, which is auto groups, it chooses all these guys and separates them, and they're separating by closed shapes. So each one of these is a cylinder, cylinder, cylinder. They're touching each other, but they're not like integrated polygons. They're not one uniform thing yet. So now what I could do is go back through these guys here, looking at the forms, seeing which ones need to be longer, which one needs to be changed. So like, you know, this first one, let's get this in the right angle so I can compare it. What I could do, just using the Control and Shift key, I could just give one of these guys a click, and it'll allow me to go directly to it, and I could start enlarging it, moving it around a little bit. I want this guy to be, like when I'm looking at this, they're very similar in this area, but this one's a lot thicker. So I'm done with that, Control and Shift, I'll click on the next one. This one's a lot larger, you know, this one's a lot bigger in this side. So I'm going to get that guy a little larger. Maybe I'll kind of pull this in a couple directions here. It's okay that I kind of got these kind of wonky cylinder shapes. I just want to make sure that the volume is controlled as much as possible. So these guys, all these guys need to move. So what I'm going to do is just move them all out of the way at once. So I'm going to hold on Control and deselect everything. I'll even hit Q so I can see this a little better. And what I'm going to do is mask out these two guys and leave these guys alone. So I'm holding on Control and Shift. I'll click that guy, and then click in the negative space, holding on to the Control key and left mouse clicking. And I'll do the same thing over here. So you can see I've created these two masks. So that way when I hit the W key, I'm only affecting these areas. Polygroups is a little confusing to work with when you first start. Let's go ahead and scale all these guys up quite a bit. But after you've worked with it a few times, you get kind of used to what the software is asking from you. Alright, so got the large one. This is another large one, I'm guessing. 2. So let's go ahead and take these guys out. Try to decide which ones I want to start with. I think I will start this one and move you forward. So if we take a look at where Some of this is right. Oops. Some of this is right going forward. I'm not sure if I want to have them ride the same direction up at the top, because I want to have a little bit of separation, but maybe it would be better to do that. Let's go ahead and see if we can adjust that. So we'll go ahead and move this guy back down here. Oops. Here. Lock him, may move him in just a little bit. That way at the top it still has that kind of here. And I think now that I'm looking at it, looks like this guy at the top one right here probably could go inward, going clockwise inward. Just go up one and hold on to the Alt key. We'll move it down here. So you can't unlock this without having to click on that. If you hold on the Alt key, it'll unlock it. So there we go. Pretty recognizable even as a spider at this point. So we have another leg over here. So again, what I'm going to do is just duplicate these guys right here, this row. And we'll go ahead and rotate this one. Oops. We'll do it on the world axis and kind of pull it back a little bit, because this is where the next leg definitely goes off and does its own thing. And then these two back guys are pretty similar. So, you know, what we need to do is just get this guy kind of formed. I can't see that there's too much of a scale difference between the two. There might be, but I think the way that what it's doing is changes like in this area right here. It starts going off into a different direction. So this might even get rotated in. This is what I kind of see it doing. It kind of rotates in and towards this guy a little bit, but then the direction changes on like this kneecap area right here, which is this guy right here, kind of goes out that way. So let's go ahead and hit the Q key. We'll start going through our masking process here. Go back and place this where we want it and rotate it to where we need it. So now you can kind of see what I was doing here. It's kind of compare them. Let's go ahead and do our back legs, and we'll just go ahead and duplicate this guy. So I'll make sure that everything is deselected. Here. And we'll go ahead and duplicate this one, and we'll make sure we select it and walk it back. Now if it looks like it hid, it's only because I accidentally clicked the eyeball. Now these guys are facing the total opposite direction almost. They're almost going this way. So I want to make sure that I start that off in the right direction. And also kind of rotate it, because there's not going to be too much we need to probably update on these guys, I think. You know, because they're basically the same thing, it's just that they're a little bit straighter. So if we update one when we duplicate it, we really have done a lot of the work for the one in the back. But this is where I want to take a look at the stomach piece that we have over here. See if it's wrapping around the right direction. In fact, this is starts out almost horizontal when it comes out, and then it rotates pretty dramatically as it goes up. So we get about something like that, all except these guys are all going back. So we have to mask out that guy. I want to Alt change the position of this guy, and then it goes back like this. Like I said, there wasn't too much of a change on this, but enough of it where we'd notice it. Okay, let's go ahead and kind of reposition that, and maybe even start lifting it up a little bit. There we go. Because I imagine though, I'm still right on this also. You see they're kind of layered, so this guy here is a little bit pushed back than this. So this is the one's kind of closest, probably between all of these, because most of the weight of the spider's back here. I imagine that this is closer to the ground to kind of brunt that weight. So just to make sure that I have it all in there, let's go ahead and scale back a little bit. I want us to take a look at how far back it goes on the abdomen area. So you can see where this is right here, and this area right here. So this guy does need to be kind of scaled in a little bit, or maybe even adjusted to be lifted up a little bit for this to work. So let's go ahead and do that. I got the angle right for the rotation, like going around like this, but I have to go back and revisit that because you can see, you know, if we look at this from the side here, maybe these guys can carry it, but I think that we'll have better success if we get this guy moved up a little bit. So let's go ahead and mask that. Place our pivot point and lift it up. Like that. And then we can go back down here. We'll actually hit the Q key and start masking out the other areas. I think this guy will probably be right. I think it's just these guys right here. They need to be moved down. There we go. That feels a little more natural to me. There we go. And now I'll go in and duplicate these guys. So let's go ahead and duplicate these guys. And make sure the eyeball's on so you see the previous one. And this is the one that probably arcs itself up straightest the most. Or back in here. It also goes down below everything. So I'm trying to find that happy medium between the two right now. There we go. And this should be relatively going back further than the other one, so there's probably is a little bit a larger scale to this. I'm just going to do a universal scale on this. Move some stuff around. Now I'll go back and make my subtle adjustments to the other guys. Making sure that the initial pose that I'm starting off with works. That is something that I could look at. Let's go ahead and hit Shift F. And recognize this as being a spider. We still got a lot, of course, work to do on this, but I got most of the setup for it complete. So let's add in these little spinneret things down at the bottom. And I guess we'll just kind of continue the trend of using cylinders. So I'm just going to append in a new cylinder. Append. Cylinder. And then I'll go ahead and rotate it and scale it the way I need it. And these are fairly tiny, but they are noticeable. Probably about right there. Let's go ahead and rotate it. See where that is located on, was it the abdomen? The butt of the spider. It's funny because I don't see it on other ones. So maybe these guys, maybe something that the tarantula really doesn't have. Nope, there it is. These little guys. So these are probably a little more nubbin-like when they, because I know that tarantulas don't do a lot of, they don't make a web, but they still release the webbing. They might do that a little bit maybe inside their burrows and stuff, but I've never, they don't hang out on webs or anything like that. They're floor monsters basically. So alright, let's take a look at this guy. I'll look at it in a few different angles, see if there's anything I want to change before I start taking the next step. Alright, so what we've done here is kind of set out a road map for where we want to take things. Some of this stuff might get deleted completely, but we have that blocked out idea for these guys. I might go ahead and add in the eyes. I haven't decided yet. We got a little bit of time left in the video. I may do that after, yeah, let's do that after we take this next step. So what we need to do now is start making duplications from one side to the other that mirror. So what we're going to do, we're going to do this one leg at a time. Similar to what we did with the other guy. So I'm just going to select this leg right here. Probably be a good idea that I go in here and start renaming these guys also. So we'll call this, leg 1. Then we'll duplicate it. You see it automatically changes to leg 2. And then I could go to my deformation. And what I'm doing to keep the tabs open, I'm holding on to Shift and clicking the word deformation. See how it didn't close out my other tab? That way I just click on mirror. Go back to the next guy over here. We'll rename it. Leg. You see, it should, oh, actually, usually, I thought it renames itself automatically, but this is going to be leg 3. Maybe it's because I put in the capital L. Yeah, Interesting. Let's rename it 3 then. I do want to keep these a little bit in order. Then we'll duplicate it. That goes to leg 4. Then we'll go over here and mirror it. And we're just doing this all the way down. Leg 5. Leg 6. Rename. Oh, I'm probably going to come up with 10 legs because I didn't name the mandible thing correctly. I just now thought about that. It's gonna be like, how come you have so many legs? It's like, because I named this, which isn't a leg. I believe we could duplicate this guy now and mirror it. There we go. Guess we could just go ahead and call this guy leg and leg. It's fine. I'll go back and rename them later, but I at least know what they are. And then this is the spinneret thing. And mirror. So now we have this kind of blocked out form of the spider. If I hit Shift F and we start going through the different poly groups and information, so at Shift F you can see where it turns on over here, and I start climbing up this list, you'll see that we still have all basic shapes. We haven't done anything really unique to any of this because of the way that the system's kind of set up right now. We got a couple things we might want to do on this. I like to work with a bit of symmetry, so we need to go back and merge some of these guys together. And then we need to Z-remesh them so that way the geometry lays out a little better also, because we won't be able to sculpt and put some of these details together. And then some of these guys need to be directly attached to each other, because, you know, you wouldn't want to have them like, you know, joints to pop off of each other. So we got a lot of work to put on this. But I think what we'll do, a little bit of the time we have left, I think we'll ignore doing the eyes. We'll put the eyes in a little later. But what we'll do is start merging our layers together and Z-remeshing them, so that way we could start doing maybe a little bit of sculpting in this, start making a little bit more transformable geometry. So I got leg 1 and 2. That's these two guys. Going to merge this guy down. I'm also going to tell them it's okay to do this in the next step because I'm just doing these guys together. I could do these all at the same time, but I don't want to. The reason for that is that I want to be able to get in between these guys. So doing them step by step, I can still have symmetry and still work with them, but if I had all of them at the same time, it might get a little messy again in there. So let's go ahead and merge this guy down. Okay. Finally, these guys. I think that's all of them. Looks right to me. Alright, so now I can go in with these guys and start Z-remeshing them. So we'll start with our basic forms that were on the top here. Now I'm just using the Alt key and left mouse click tap to this. So I'm like, left mouse click tap will help me hop through these guys. And we can close out these other guys. We're just going to keep Z-remesher on. And we're just going to let this solve however it solves. It's going through each one of these guys. Just change out the geometry so we don't get any more pinching on our shapes. And it kind of lays out the geometry for us. That way we could start taking a brush to it and it'd be even. The Z-remesher also won't force these guys to be merged together, because we probably want to be able to move these guys around. So like we have a full cylinder here, it's not attached to the other cylinders. And if I want to keep my groups, you see how these guys still have a group? All I have to do is tell to keep groups, and then when I hit the Z-remesher, we don't lose those. So I'm going to turn those on. We didn't have for this guy. We could always turn it back on. We could always regain our stuff from it, but I want to keep my groups. think that's it. Yeah. So, did I do the eyes? Couldn't remember if I did these guys. Looks like I did. Cool. I got that little mandible part. All right. So now that we've done this, we can start working with some other tools if you guys want to start taking an early approach to doing some sculpting. The ones I would recommend kind of playing around with would be the clay buildup. It's a good tool. It does a great job of building up form, but you probably need to lower its intensity quite a bit. And I would use these guys just to not to sculpt out fine detail, but just to help you kind of push down meshes. You know, I was just using the move brush before, but now I can see I can able to really flatten this stuff out. So I'd use like clay buildup, and then when I hold on a shift key, you know how we're using smooth? I'm going to switch smooth out with flatten. So that way every time I hit the shift key, I'm going to flatten. And I can just kind of go between these guys. I could do like my little carve down with my clay buildup and then flatten it out. And then I'll start getting those shapes that I'm looking for that kind of bend around. And I might do this just a little bit between now and the next lecture. I don't want us to get too far ahead on this. I think this is a good solid start. Because what we'll do in the next class is sculpt out the legs with a little bit more detail and the head, this base area. We'll get through a couple little areas on this and start talking about how we map out some information, but we'll also take a look at some other tools inside of ZBrush we haven't touched yet, guys. So that's where we're going to really need to start on with today. You know, review the exercise sheet and any material that goes along with it. And if you have any questions, like, you know, is it okay to do this particular insect? You send me a JPEG of what you had in mind. A couple of things I'll also mention. It has to be a realistic insect. You know, we're not doing like Pokemon or something like that. We're trying to challenge ourselves to get really good at applying texture detail, sculpted detail. So we're not trying to go for like any kind of cartoon stylized stuff. But I think what we could do, just to kind of wrap up things, go ahead Shift F. This would be fun to play around with. I don't remember if we talked about this yet. But that is, there are, if you want to play around with different type of rendering, if you go to Lightbox and you look at render set, there's these render sets, and here you could always play around with them. When you double click these guys, they apply that render to the scene. So if I click render now, you can see it changes the appearance of it. And there's some fun ones in here that you can play around with and see what they do. Nothing we're going to be really using in class, but they're fun to look at. So if you want to play around with your forms and kind of experiment around with ZBrush, I say go for it. But what I would do, if you're planning on doing something like that, just because, you know, there's going to be definitely more material on it, I'm going to go save as. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to save this as maybe part 1. That way I could go back to look at it later on, just in case, you know, there's some changes I needed to make on it. It's still in its very simplified form. So let's get to the Fall 2020, the digital sculpting. Let's get my project folder created. And this is a Z tool. I'm going to call this like base underscore spider underscore 1. Just in case I need to make more. Now, the unfortunate thing with ZBrush is that they don't do incremental saving. So anytime I need to do something like that, I need to be very specific with my naming conventions, because I don't want to lose any of my work if I started working something too far into the ground. So something I definitely recommend. So other than that, guys, I think we're going to leave it here in the next video. Like I said, we're going to start carving in some more pertinent details, maybe start taking some of these legs, like the individual legs, and start dynameshing them together so they actually look more like our references, you know, with the little rounded areas or the creases and the kneecaps and stuff, you know, adding in those smaller details. So just a reminder, guys, also, when you're starting this project, the very first thing that you need to do is get references. The key to successful design is always going to be really good references, because you're going to know where you're taking it. So good luck to you guys, and I look forward to seeing what you create. Bye.